Today we want to be looking at the group frequency table, and what we want to be doing is we want to first construct a frequency table, a group frequency table with the data that is going to be given to you. Well, to start off, we're going to use a group frequency table. One thing that you have to observe is that the data is going to be large. Now you have already seen two types of data. You have a small set of data where it's 10 to 15 numbers, right? So it's very small, very easy to manipulate. The second one is whenever you have a large set of data, but in this case the range is small. That makes it the ungrouped frequency table. Now notice that this one is the group frequency table. Now the data is still going to be large, but in this case the range is large, right? So in this case your range is going to be large. For example, if you have to find the range, and let's say that the range you get here is 55 minus 4, then in this case your range is 51. This would be considered a large range. Now whenever you get that large number there, it means that within your table what you will need to do is group the information that is given to you. Group frequency table data is going to be large. It is going to be 25 numbers, 30 numbers, 40 numbers, 60, 70, 80, 90, 120, and so on numbers, right? So the amount of numbers that you have is big. The range is large. So whenever you calculate the range, you should get a number where it is around 25 and over. Once you see that, then you will have to group your information, right? So let's quickly take a look at an example now. In terms of an example, 30 test grades, right? So one, we are noticing that the data is going to be large. It is going to be 30 of them. Two, if we take a look at test grades is normally out of 100 or out of 30 points, out of 56 points, and so on. So you can, as soon as you hear that, you can hear or you can know that the range is going to be large, right? So 30 test grade, and then it is as follows. Let's say you get 24, 12, 66. So let's continue with 30. So we get 52, 32, 91, 76, 74, 92, 38, 73. Okay. So we have the set of numbers there. You have 30 numbers there, and then they're all test grades. So one, we have a large set of data, and then two, we have the range is large. Let's take a look at what is the range. The range, we know it's the largest number or the largest entry, which is 9. I would believe 92 is the largest entry here. So it's going to be 92 minus the smallest entry. We have 11, and I guess 11 is going to be the smallest entry. Now if we subtract those two numbers, we get 81, and then you can see that the range is going to be very large, 81, right? So what we want to do is we want to continue by creating a table for the data that is given to us. I don't have a ruler in hand, but I will try to create a straight line freehand, right? So let me see. We need our first column, which is going to be the grades, test grades. I'll label it as test grade. And then in this, in most cases, the grouping or how you should group will be given to you, right? Like for instance, in this case, I would ask you guys to group it from 11 to 20, right? And then I will say, all right, maybe I will start off the first two, 21 to 30, right? So this grouping, the grouping will be given to you. If it's not given to you, then maybe you will need to group on your or by yourself. And then normally how we group is by either groups of 5 or groups of 10, right? But in most cases, don't worry about it. In most cases, it's given, it started for you, and then you just need to continue. So it's going to be given like how you have it there now, and then what you need to do is just continue up to you up to when you have included the largest entry. So you have 20 to 30, that's 31 to 40, 41 to 50, and then we have one more because it reaches way up to 92, right? So that is what we have. So we have grouped our information or the data that has been given to you, and the reason why we grouped it is because we had a large range, which means that we couldn't list 81 numbers, right? We couldn't list 81 numbers. Next thing that follows after this is we need to count tally. We have tally followed by the frequency, and then we will continue afterwards. Now remember that the frequency is F, right? Now in this case, the test grade is not X. We will need to wait a little while, and then I'll show you which one is going to be X. X is going to be one of the columns that is added to this one, because X cannot take the value of 11, X cannot take the value of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, nor 20, right? So we need to find something that will represent this range, and then that is what is going to take the value of X. But going back, let's find what is the tally for the individual numbers. For the numbers 11 to 20, we have 1, I will scratch it, 1, 2, 3. So that means I have 3 numbers that are from 11 to 20. Now notice that if I do a mistake, I can go back and enter it later on. So I will say 1, 2, 3 and leave it like that at this point, because if I do a mistake or I left out any number, then I could go and add in one more to the tally. The next one is going to be 20 to 30, 21 to 30, sorry. So 21 to 30, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right, so that's 4 of them. So I go back to my tally and I say 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll leave it like that at this point, because if I have anything missing, then I could go back and add it in. The next one is 31 to 40. 31 to 40, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 of them again, and I go back and I put it in 1, 2, 3, 4, right? and then I have 41 to 50, and that's going to be 3. Right? So that's going to be 3. 51 to 60. 51 to 60 we have 1. 61 to 70, that's going to be 2 of them. And then 71 to 80, we have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, remove this one and then cross it out to make it 5. Right? So remove this one here. Alright, we have 81 to 90, so we have 4. So let's go back and take a look at our numbers. I have scratched all of them. Yes. Alright, so I move on to the frequency, and then what I need to do is just write the same numbers corresponding to the amount of sticks that you have there. That's 3, that's 4, that's 4, and 4, right? We need to find what is summation of f. Now this summation of f is going to be very helpful because we will get the amount corresponding to up here. So whenever I finish adding this, I must have the same amount that I have up here, which is 30. So let's do that. So that's going to be, let me quickly do it with my calculator here. So the addition of all of this is 30. Now notice that this corresponds to the amount of numbers that I had originally. So that's 30, which means I did not leave out any number, right? So let's move on to the other one. Now this is a new column in terms of the group frequency table. It is called the midpoint. And then the midpoint, what's happening here with the midpoint is that the midpoint will take the value of x. Now remember that I told from the previous, the on group frequency table, this one was the value for x. Now here, this cannot be the value for x because x, which one would x be? Would x be 12, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, or 19 or 20? Which one? Would x take 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30? Which value would x take here, right? So to make it uniform, what we do is we find the midpoint, and then the midpoint will take the value for x. How do we get the midpoint? The midpoint is very easy. You just take the lower boundary, which is 11, add the upper boundary, which is 20, and you divide by 2, right? So 11 plus 20, that's going to be 31. 31 divided by 2, that's going to be 15.5, right? So that means that the value for x here, or the number that we're going to be using to represent this boundary 11 to 20, is going to be 15.5. The other one, let's find the other midpoint. The other midpoint is going to be the same thing. The lower boundary, in this case 21, plus the upper boundary 30, and you divide that by 2. 21 plus 30 gives you 51, divided by 2, that gives me 25.5, right? The other midpoint again, 31 plus 40 divided by 2, that's going to be 71, divided by 2, that's going to be 35.5, right? So now that you know the midpoint, the rest is going to be the same thing. You add the lower boundary, right? 41 in this case, plus 50, which is the upper boundary, and you divide by 2. So 41 plus 50, that gives me 91, divided by 2, that gives me 45. 5.5. And let me quickly enter the rest, right? So that's going to be 55.5, 65.5, and 95.5, right? So that is going to be the midpoint. Now, once you get the midpoint, we need to add in another column, right? Which is going to be the frequency times the x, right? The frequency times the x. But in this case, you already know that the x is going to be the midpoint. So in this case, it's frequency times the midpoint. So what is 3 times 15.5? 3 times 15.5 is 46.5, right? So frequency, what's my frequency? The frequency is 3, x is 15.5, it's times, so it's going to be, or if you put it as fx, it's going to be frequency times midpoint. So 3 times 15.5 gives me 46.5. 4 times 25.5, 4 times 25.5 gives me 102, right? And then the same thing goes for the other one. 4 times 35.5, so 4 times 35.5 gives me 142. 5 times 75.5, that's going to be 377.5 times 95.5, which gives you 382, right? So that is what we have for fx. And then you already know how to find fx is the frequency times the value for x, right? This is what we get. After we have found everything there, we also need to include the summation of fx, the summation of the numbers you multiplied, and then our total sum adds up to 1715, 1715, right? So this is what we have. Now the last column is going to be the cumulative frequency, and then what is the cumulative frequency again? Is the accumulation of the numbers, and then which numbers are we going to accumulate? It's the numbers under the frequency, the column, the frequency. Now I always tell my students that they need to think of the cumulative frequency as like a game. Like for instance, if I say since it's the cumulative frequency, it's talking about the frequency, so that means I have to refer myself to the column frequency and not midpoint, nor the column that says frequency times x, but the one that says frequency. Now this is how I tell them to do it. The 3 represents how many points they got in terms of a game. Let's say basketball, football, or anyone. Game 1, they scored 3 points. So at the end of the first game, they accumulate only 3 points, right? Because it's the first game. Game 2 now, let's say that you're playing game 2 and you scored 4 points. So that means that if I ask you how many points have you accumulated, then you will not give me the number 4, but you will give me the total amount, which is the first game and the second game, which is 3 and 4, making that 7. So you have accumulated 7 points after the second game. Third game now, an additional 4 points the team takes. So how much have you accumulated? I have accumulated 4 plus 4 plus 3, which gives me a total of 11 points, right? So that's the accumulation of the frequency. So if you add in a next game, you scored 3 points. So how much have you accumulated? 11 is what I got here for the first 3 numbers. So if I add in 3 more points, makes that 11 plus 3 gives you 14 points. A next game, you scored only 1 point, which means that the accumulation just adds up or just goes up by 1, which is right. The next game you get 2 points, which means that the total accumulation after that particular game you have, it is 17, right? The next game you scored 5 points, so that means you get 22. The next game is 4 points, so that makes it 26 points. The next game is an additional 4 points, which makes it a total of 30 points, right? So you see how the accumulation works. Now the accumulation is how much points have you accumulated from the frequency. At the end of the first game, I only accumulate 3 points. Only 3 points I got. At the end of the second game, I get 4 points for the second game, and then 3 points for the first game, making a total of 7. So I accumulate 7 points. The third game is an additional 4 points, so that's 7 and 4 more gives me a total of 11 points, right? Now what does the accumulation again gives you? The accumulation gives you what the positions for each individual X. So if I ask you what's the 11th, the first position, the first position is going to be 15.5, which represents the number 11 to 20, right? So the first to the third number, the first number, the second number, and the third number are all 15.5. After the third number, you move on to the fourth number. From the fourth number to the seventh number, you have the 8th number. Then from the 8th to the 11th number, you will have 35.5. 11th, you have the 12th number to the 14th number. They are 45.5. From the 14th number, you jump to the 15th number. But notice that the 15th, 14th, you jump to the 15th, and the last number would have been 15th again. So that means it just remains as 15th number. So the 15th number is going to be 55.5. The next one, that's going to be the 16th number to the 17th number. That is going to be 65.5. From the 17th, and then it is 27th number, sorry, to the 30th number, they're going to be 95.5. So majority of it is similar to the first frequency table, which is the ungrouped one, but in this case it's frequency table, because what we need to do now is we need to group them. Like I said, this will be started for you, or it will be given to you. You just need to continue after that and then move on, right? The tally and the frequency remains the same as the first one. You just count how many numbers fall or are from 11 to 20, and then you just put sticks to represent the amount in tally, and then the number to represent the number as a frequency, right? After that, then we need to calculate what is the midpoint. The purpose for the midpoint is to use a number that will represent the group sum, right? So 15.5 will represent numbers from 11 to 20. 25.5 will represent numbers from 21 to 30. 35.5 will represent the numbers from 31 to 40, and so on. Fx is take the frequency and you multiply it by the midpoint, and you get this number. 4 times 25.5 gives you the 102, right? And then you just multiply. Now notice that this here is the estimated sum. The cumulative frequency, it's the accumulation of the numbers up to a particular row. So row 1 would represent, let's say, game 1, you get 3 points, so the accumulation is 3 points. Game 2 you get 4 points, so the accumulation will be 3 plus 4 gives us 7. Game 3 is going to be 3, 4, and 4, so the accumulation becomes 11, and so on, and so on, and so on.